welcome to day 3. I am so glad that you guys are here because today is a good one. We're going to talk about diagnostics. For those of you that don't know me and are just tuning in now, my name is Victoria. I'm 27 years old. I was diagnosed with fibro when I was 20, and they believe I've had it since I was about 12 or 13 years old. So today we're going to talk about the diagnostics and what it takes to get diagnosed. And while it is different for a lot of doctors, we do have some things in common. And sometimes we don't always go through this, by the way. This is just what I went through. What other people had gone through as well. So we're also going to talk about, too, because since they have to rule everything else out, we're going to talk about the difference between fibro and lupus. And that's actually where I'm going to start, is what is the difference between fibromyalgia and lupus, because that is a huge debate, especially for people in my age range. A lot of the times, from what my doctor has said, you cannot get a definite diagnosis of lupus when you're under the age of about 35. So, which means I have about 13 more years till I can get a diagnosis on whether or not this is lupus or fibromyalgia. So I want to talk about the differences. So really there's one big one. The big difference between the two is that lupus is an autoimmune disorder, which means that your body can't differentiate between foreign cells and your own, so your body attacks itself. So, and it can progress extremely quickly. I've seen it in someone my age where over the course of 3 to 5 years, he's in a wheelchair. And he's got fibromyalgia and lupus because he has symptoms of both. And he has some of the key ones that are different between the two. So he has fibromyalgia and lupus, and it did take him a while to get diagnosed. But he walks with a cane when he can, but he is wheelchair bound. And it's very scary to see someone that young go through this. It was heartbreaking, and it still is heartbreaking because I'm still having to watch him go through that. And that's part of the reason, too, I want to do this, this challenge. I want people to understand that this is what it can do paired with other conditions, too. So with lupus and fibro, I have this handy little chart up here. It kind of shows what symptoms are more common in fibro, what symptoms are more common in lupus, and then what overlaps. So some of the things that we both have in common is that fatigue, we have the brain fog, we have the headaches and the depression and the stress. A lot of us have mental illnesses, or we've had that trauma to the body, or even to our mind, and that's how the fibro came into play. And lupus can come into play, or you can start experiencing onset symptoms, according to a friend of mine, a lot sooner, just based on trauma to your body. And if I'm wrong on that, if a doctor does see this, please correct me if I'm wrong. So, and some of the differential symptoms is for lupus, you're going to see more organ failure and organ issues. It's like kidney disease and heart disease, fevers, which is one of the reasons they're still thinking that I could have lupus because I constantly run fevers. So now that we can see the difference between lupus and fibro, because we still have to rule out lupus in the diagnostic process, I'm going to start it on that. So I do have notes because my brain fog is a little rough with my allergies right now. So I do have some notes on the different stages of diagnoses, and how to get the diagnosis and what leads up to it. So it is a process. Let me tell you, I've seen people go through it for 3 to 5 years, sometimes longer. Then I've seen people where it takes a month or two, or even less than that, to get diagnosed with either fibro. So one thing that they always look for is the most common symptoms. It's like widespread pain, joint irritation. They check your 18 different pressure points that you have in your body. Some doctors don't do that. Mine personally did, especially when I got the referral to go in there. She knew on the spot that I probably had fibro, but we still had to rule everything out. And you have to rule out rheumatoid arthritis. You have to rule out lupus. They check your mental health. So it's a lot to see. And then you move on to a neurologist. So you start with that rheumatologist in most cases. They check those pressure points. They check to see if you have the most common symptoms with that widespread pain. They rule out any rheumatic diseases, neurological diseases, and mental health as well. Mental health, a lot of us have it, let's be real. But what they want to make sure is that whatever whatever you're diagnosed with is not what's physically causing that pain through your body. So they have to make sure that you don't have anything mental health wise that could possibly be causing it. So they have to rule it out. So after you go through all of that, or at least that's how I got diagnosed with the fibro, the first diagnosis. So at that time, I was told I had to have 2 people sign off on the diagnosis. I had to have a rheumatologist and a neurologist in the state of Illinois. Whether or not that is correct information, I am not sure, but I have seen a lot of people, even in other states, that have to go to a rheumatologist and a neurologist to get diagnosed. And that's just to rule out 2 different things because they work in 2 separate ways, but also come together in certain aspects. So, and they do a lot of blood work. Let me tell you, multiple blood panels. They take at least a pint of your blood, it feels like, if not half your body. Like, they take a lot. It's crazy how much blood they take to rule everything out. I mean, they're checking your white cell count, your blood, like all your blood counts. They're checking to make sure that there's no signs of cancer. They're checking all of your vitamins. It's crazy. Like, I remember looking at the list because I had asked just to see what they were testing for. It was probably a page about this size. And the font was probably not this big. That's where my patient's at today. But about this big. And it was just listed from top to bottom on what they were testing for. And that wasn't the first time over the course of about a month or 2 that I had to get that done. So after my rheumatologist did it, she sent over the information to a neurologist. She said, you need to go to a neurologist. You need to make sure there's nothing going on in the brain. They're going to check your sleep, how you sleep, see if you have sleep apnea. And they're going to figure, or at that time, they had thought that I was possibly narcoleptic because I was sleeping so much through the day and taking naps at work on my downtime. So I was school bus 8 at the time, so I had like a 3.5 hour break in between my 2 shifts. So I would sleep during that time, and then I'd sleep all night. I'd sleep after work, and it was a lot. I got a lot of sleep. Let's be real. I'm never gonna get that much sleep again, but I got a lot of sleep. So when I went to the neurologist, they did the sleep test. He went over the blood work with me that had already been taken. He actually wanted to do another panel himself. He wanted to double check just to make sure that everything was correct. And then he also brought up the fact, which was very scary to me because I have known people that for a fibromyalgia diagnosis, they did have to get a spinal tap. I got lucky, I did not. So just based on my cell count. So the spinal tap is a needle that they inject and they stick in your spine, and then they pull out the fluid and they check it to see if you have bone cancer. Because a lot of my symptoms too aligned with bone cancer. Go figure. I guess it's another one too that has a lot of common symptoms with fibro. So does rheumatoid arthritis, which is why they have to rule that out. So I got full x-rays, CAT scans, MRIs, you name it, from top to bottom, just to rule everything out. And then they were finally able to diagnose me. And while I want to mention too, as I did in the previous video, all of our journeys are different, so all of our diagnostics might be a little bit different as well. But we all have that blood work in common. We all have that neurologist or a rheumatologist in common. But it took both of them to sign off on it. That way I could fully get diagnosed. And this took probably about, I want to say about 3.5 months for me to get fully diagnosed just because I had to set up dates going for the sleep testing. I had to set up dates to get the blood work done, and they need to wait a certain amount of time. I had to wait to get into the neurologist because he was one of the only specialists in the area that could take me and that had experience with fibromyalgia and migraines too. I had really bad migraines at that time. That's why they really wanted me to see one, to make sure that what I was experiencing wasn't just from those migraines. So it was a lot of tests and process and constantly checking my blood sugar too and blood pressure at home. I learned how to do all of that, how to check my pulse properly so I don't have to always use my watch because those aren't 100% accurate. So I learned how to do all of that. That way I could track my body symptoms. And that's one thing too that I was asked to do, which I would encourage you to do anyway. And highly encourage anybody that's trying to get diagnosed to track your symptoms. So I made a journal at the time, and it had my pain scale from 1 to 10 that day, my tiredness level, it had my brain fog level, mental health, how I was feeling. So I do have depression and anxiety. So it had everything that had journaling. I could write what I ate because I wanted to see if there were different foods that were affecting me. My diet was a big effect. So, and at that time, it definitely was. I couldn't keep food down. So my pain was 10 times worse than what it should have been because I couldn't get proper nutrition. So track it. I urge you to track it. That way you can see what's going on with your body visually, because we can't see fibro. We can see the symptoms. We can't physically see fibro. So, which I talked about yesterday. So just track what you know, track your symptoms. That way it'll be easier too for you to get diagnosed. And you have all that and you can be like, here you go, here's my notebook. These are all my symptoms, or what day would you like me to flip to? I'm happy to share this with you. So do that for your doctors. It helps them. My neurologist and rheumatologist were both very grateful that I kept track of that, especially when I was on monthly visits for a while until we could get everything under control. So they were very grateful I had that journal. I could just go through and put everything in, and then since I worked out a lot and still do, on the back side of that journaling page was everything I did for workouts and or physical activity. There were some days where all I could do was go for a walk because I was so tired. So it tracked my physical activity to see how physical activity was helping with the fibro, what was and what wasn't. Tomorrow is day 4. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about the one thing that every fibromyalgia patient has in common. And that is, what is a flare-up and why we don't feel pain like everybody else. So I'm going to go over what different flare-ups that we have, what different flare-ups look like for everybody. I'm going to explain to you why we don't feel pain like you do, why we have very high pain tolerances or some of us don't, and what different pains feel like to us. So also, again, guys, use that hashtag on social media, FibroAwareness21. It'll be at the end of this video. That's just for this project, that it's just for this challenge for this year. And I am so excited to see you tomorrow. Hopefully I won't sound so stuffed up. So I will see you guys soon. Have a great rest of your day. I hope it's as sunny by you as it is by me.